Hey friends, welcome back to Chat with Nat, Conversations That Count, where we talk real life, real money, and real strategies to build wealth without worry and a life well lived. Today's episode is brought to you by Casa de Confidence Productions. Julie and Dan Collins are the kind of team every podcaster dreams of. Supportive, professional, and incredibly talented at helping your voice come through clearly and confidently. If you've ever thought, maybe I should start a podcast, go connect with them at casadeconfidence.website. Caregiving doesn't just start with a plan. It starts with a moment, a phone call, a diagnosis, a fall. And just like that, your life changes, not just emotionally, but financially, physically, and mentally too. Because here's the truth nobody talks about. Caregiving will cost you more than just your time. And if you're not prepared, it can cost you your future. Welcome back to the show, you guys. I'm so excited to have you here. Today's episode is deeply personal for me because caregiving isn't just something that I talk about. It's something I live every single day. And I'm not alone. Millions of families are navigating this right now, often silently, often unprepared. So today we're pulling back the curtains on what caregiving really looks like, the questions that caregivers often get asked, and the financial reality most people don't see coming. Of course, I've got my Nat's money tip for the week, and it is, if you don't have a plan for caregiving, you don't have a complete financial plan. Let me say that again. Retirement planning without a caregiving plan is incomplete. And the reason for that is 70% of people over 65 years old will need some form of long-term care. And Medicare does not cover most long-term care needs. The average caregiver spends between $7,000 to $10,000 per year out of their own pocket. So beyond what other benefits or what other plans are in place. So here's the action step for you. Start asking yourself, if something happens, who's going to pay? Who's going to help? And what's the actual plan? Because hope is not a strategy. Today, I'm also joined by a good friend and business partner of mine, somebody who understands this journey both personally and professionally, Steve Kent. Steve had a successful career in the IT industry before transitioning into entrepreneurship, where he now helps families build and protect their financial futures. He is the father of 2 adult children, and most importantly for today's conversation, he walked the caregiving journey with both of his parents before they passed. So Steve brings not just knowledge, but lived experience. Steve, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you as a guest again.
Thank you, Nat. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to share my story.
Absolutely. Please do. Please share a little bit of kind of what gives you the foundation for today's conversation?
So my story of how I got so intimately involved with this whole long-term care situation is back in the 1990 time frame. I had a conversation with a couple that I met. They were in their mid-60s, healthy, vibrant, both working. Everything was great. And long before I got into this business, but knowing enough, I said to them, wouldn't it make sense if you plan for the future just in case? And they both looked at me and they said, nope, we're good. Okay. And all is good. And I walked away. About 10 years later, they're in their mid-70s and we had the same conversation. And they both said, nope, we're good. And about 7 or so years later, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So they took his license away. He was in a wheelchair, and then he was bedridden. And for 6 years, they paid out of their own pocket for in-home care because he did not qualify under the rules at that time of Medicare. When he passed at 88, but the woman also came down with an acute case of Alzheimer's, and she lasted 5 years. But because they spent so much of their money on him, there was almost nothing left for her. So every month was a decision of, do I buy food? Do I pay the electric bill? What do I do? And she passed. That couple was my parents. And that's why, sorry,
It's all right.
that's why this means so much to me because of what happened to them. And I want to do everything I can so my kids don't have the same issue with me in all the areas we're going to talk about today.
Thank you for sharing that. Look, the honest truth is, you know what? Thank you for sharing the emotion, because this is an emotional battle that those of us who have loved ones in those situations are fighting constantly. And it is a basis, a strong basis. You know, I came into the financial industry wanting to help people save for retirement. As a green agent, I didn't know all of the scenarios. My parents did not yet need care. And the further along I've gotten in the journey, helping families in this situation, becoming a family in this situation and a full-time hands-on caregiver for my parents, has opened my eyes that yes, it's important to have life insurance. It's important to be saving for retirement. It's important to be saving for your kids' future and whatever kind of legacy you need to leave behind. But if you do not have a part of your plan that is designated for care, you may leave nothing behind, depending on the care that you need. And the truth is, what I tell people all the time is if you do save for care, in addition to all the other things, and you don't need it, you're one of the 30% who doesn't face that situation. It's just that much bigger of a legacy you can leave behind if you set it up correctly. And so that is the foundation behind the why for you and I both, Steve. And we've talked a lot about it. You know, I want the listeners to realize caregiving is rarely planned. It's reactive. And let me say this from my personal situation. I've shared before that my senior year in high school, my parents got me work release from school because my grandfather lived with us. My dad worked nights and my mom worked days. So there was about an hour and a half overlap every morning that if I went to school, nobody would be there to take care of him. So the school district approved me to do work release and be able to get my grandfather up every day, get him dressed, feed him breakfast. And I think that planted the seed in me to where I always said, someday I will take care of my parents. But that does not mean I ever sat down and really planned out, thought about what does someday look like? Or before I got into this industry, asked, what do you have set up, saved, and set aside for that? It was when my mom's diagnosis came out, actually after I was already in the industry. My mom got diagnosed in July of 2020. She fell in July of 2021, and that's when my brother and I found out she'd been diagnosed. They hadn't told us. They still lived on their own, and that's when I flew out. We put together my parents' trust, and we finally had the conversation about what do you have, where is it at, and what do you want your future that we're facing to look like? And so that became my opportunity to step into the caregiver role that I said I'd always want to be. But again, that all happened within a few months' time. And 6 months later, a doctor said they can't live safely on their own. And here I was moving them to Texas to live with me. So even though I always planned to be a caregiver for them, I had no clue what that could look like. And it is an emotional shift, going from a child to the decision maker, becoming your parent's parent. And the invisible workload, the appointments, the medications, the mobility, the finances, where is the money? Where is it going? Where does it need to go? Right? Over 53 million Americans, 53 million Americans are unpaid caregivers. 1 in 5 adults are actively caregiving in some form or fashion. And they provide an estimated 600 plus billion in unpaid care annually. Caregiving is one of the largest unpaid jobs in the world, and most people are promoted into it overnight. One phone call, one diagnosis, and it leads to everything, right? So talk a little bit, Steve, if you will, kind of on some of those points I brought up and what that kind of looked like for you with your parents.
So there is no way that anybody can plan for this because we don't know when. We don't know the level of care. how long that care is going to last. So how do we plan financially, emotionally, physically? We don't know.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned at the beginning, my father went from being vibrant to losing his license, and a battle with that, because now it's a loss of freedom because now you don't have the
Mm.
car.
Yep.
Then it became the wheelchair and he couldn't get up. He couldn't walk. But even when he was able to get up, it's how does he move from one place to the next? How does he take the shower by himself? How does he do this stuff? And the answer is you can't. So I'm in
Mm.
there with him. Um, and then when he was bedridden, I knew that he could hear me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew he could see me because his eyes were moving, but he couldn't talk.
Yeah.
And he was physically incapable of moving. His arm was kind of like this. And if you tried to straighten it out, you could break the arm. So you have to leave it like this.
Yeah.
And that lasted a couple of years in that position. And then one day I went over and my mother was in the other room and he was fading and I just couldn't do it anymore. And I leaned over and I said to him, "It's okay." And that night he passed.
Mm.
But he needed that okay. He needed that something to say, okay, I've lived, stop suffering and go.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very tough thing to do, but it's a quality of life.
Yeah.
But it's those decisions that you have to make that you never thought you would. There's no reason you should think about that. But when the time comes and you have to make that decision, it's not good, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to. And my mother was in hospice for the last couple of weeks because she had also fallen and she went straight downhill.
Mm.
And those last couple of weeks, she was also like out of it. And one day in hospice, the nurse was out in the waiting station. And I went into her and I leaned over and I said the same thing. I said, "It's enough. You're suffering. It's okay to go." And that night she went. And it's a very, very tough thing to do. But how do you plan? Again, how? How
Yeah.
long? What decisions? As you had said earlier, it's the financial, it's the emotional, it's the physical, it's the guilt of having to make that statement of it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not easy and you can't plan. But as you said, that there are people to reach out to, talk to them. You're not alone. Don't try to do it alone because it will take its toll. And you don't want to be in the same position. You want to be there for your kids and your family. And that's what I went through. And it's not easy. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. It's a heavy burden to carry. And it's also not talked about enough. And we're going to get to that in a minute, but I want to stay on this piece for just a little bit
Mhm.
longer. Um, Part of looking at all of that is having the conversations about what they want. When my mom's diagnosis, what was known, I started flying to Utah. I live in Texas. My parents lived in Utah. My brother and his family also lives in Utah. And so I started flying to Utah every quarter to go to my mom's doctor's appointments. And the first time I went, we pulled out the red folder that, if you're watching this, still lives. Let's see, right there. Wait, where's my hand? That's the red folder. Now, my mom and dad had this folder for years and years and said to my brother and I, "Let's sit down and look at the red folder." And we were like, "No, we don't want to. That's depressing. We don't want to have those conversations." And now I tell people, go have that conversation. Here for two reasons. One, the sooner you have it, because it is an emotional, hard conversation. And your parents' wishes may not align with yours. For example, your parents may want you to take care of them, but maybe you're like, "Nope, I'm not wired to be a caregiver." And that is okay. That is an okay decision for you to make. But if there is different expectations, and then you've got to look at Are the finances in place to support either way for you to become a caretaker? What does that look like? Do you have to leave your job? Lucky for me, I'd started my business a couple years prior and I was already full time. And so I'm able to work from home, but that is not the norm. So people are juggling a full time job and trying to show up as a caretaker and feeling like a failure every single day. And I will tell you, as a caregiver, in different ways, you will feel like a failure every single day because it's like parent guilt. Oh man, I yelled at my kid for doing whatever, throwing mashed potatoes on the floor. I probably could have handled that better. It's the same thing with your parents. My mom is significantly less cooperative at night when it's time to go to bed. And all I need her to do is step off a standing frame, pivot, and get into bed. And when you're dealing with memory care specific, their brains don't function like ours anymore. And when they're tired, it's even less so. So I can be telling her a simple command, step back. Her brain cannot process it. There's other things going on in there. And so I will I don't scream and yell, but I raise the volume of my voice, thinking if I say it louder, I can interrupt. And I'm having to learn that doesn't work either. But then I feel like, oh my gosh, my poor mom's probably feeling like I was yelling at her. Now, again, it goes back to their brains don't work the same way. So no, she's probably not thinking that. But oftentimes I'll go to bed feeling bad because I'm frustrated with her. And the thing is, I'm not frustrated with her. I'm frustrated with the difficulty of the situation. And yet it's also our reality. So that's why I challenge people. Number one, do you even want to be a caregiver? Or what if you want to be, but your parents are like, absolutely not? My sister-in-law's parents just sold their home and moved into a retirement community that I got the chance. I was back in Utah last month and I got the chance to go visit them because my sister-in-law and I have been friends since 7th grade. So I know her parents from long before she married my brother. And we got to go visit them. And this outfit is set up. But they were like, no, we don't want you to take care. We're going to go live independently while we can still live and enjoy our lives.
No.
But it's a facility that has the advanced care that can come into your condo. And then when needed, you can go to the assisted living if necessary, and then on to nursing care in the same facility for no additional cost. It's all built into the plan. But if you don't have that conversation, you don't know. And then what happens is the tragedy occurs, the diagnosis happens, they fall, you get a phone call, they're in the hospital. And now in the heat of the emotion, you've got to make these kind of decisions, possibly with siblings that have completely different opinions. Have those conversations now. And if there's things to work through and work out, there's still time on your side to do that before the phone call comes, before the diagnosis happens. And I think that caregiving in any form or fashion, long distance caregiving, support caregiving in person, full-time hands-on caregiving in person is heavy and hard. Nothing will ever change that. But if you have the financial burden and the emotions that go along with it stacked on top, it is one of the heaviest things you will ever carry. Would you agree, Steve?
100% I agree. And going back for a second to the red folder, we didn't have those conversations with my parents. They wouldn't. They absolutely wouldn't. But I can tell you that I have my own version of a red folder.
Yeah.
And it's already done. My kids know where it is. Everything about me is in there. All my paperwork, all my finances, what I want to do, my directives. I have all my paperwork, set up from that perspective. Excuse me. And they know what is going to happen. And if I get to that point that there's questions and stuff, pull the plug.
Mm-hmm.
That may sound crazy. I don't want to do to my kids what I had to go through with my parents.
Yeah.
I'm not saying what they did is bad and stuff, because again, they don't know that based on the situation.
Yeah.
But I don't want to put my kids through what I went through. It's not fair to them on a whole bunch of levels. So I'm prepared for that. And I tell everybody the same thing, and they say, "Nah, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?" But I know, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
but not enough people plan for it. And
Yeah.
when that happens is where as bad choice of words, but all hell breaks loose in the heat of the moment when it's like, I
Hmm.
need to make a decision now. And then what happens if you have multiple siblings? They're all thinking different things
Yep.
and nothing is written down or discussed with the parents.
Yep.
Now you have infighting, but you still have one or two people based on one or both parents um, having to need the care now, but you're all arguing about what needs to get done. It's a
Yeah.
no-win situation.
Yeah.
So you have to get it done. You have no choice. You have to.
Yeah. And that brings up a couple of really good points. Excuse me. The first one I want to touch on is when you have those conversations, make sure your parents have a trust in place, not a will. A will is great. It will designate where they want things to go. A trust includes a will and all of the directives to enforce or see through what their choices are. There's a healthcare directive, there's financial power of attorney, and there's medical power of attorney. That is all included in a trust package. Go get that done. There's a whole bunch of other things that fall into it, but when we're talking specifically about caregiving, that is what's going to give you, number one, it's going to tell you what your parents actually want.
Mhm.
My parents do not want, if my parents will have no quality of life and they will have to be kept alive by a machine for the rest of their life, they don't want it. They're like, no, DNR. If you have to resuscitate me, DNR.
Right.
If they can't
Right.
say flat out, there is a good chance, which let's be honest, with my mom in her advanced stage of dementia now, there's no reversing where she's at.
Correct.
And any
Right.
significant medical situation is likely to exacerbate her decline even faster, which it
Mm.
has sped up a lot this last 4 months. So, because of that, they were like, nope, we're doing the DNR. They signed all the paperwork. There's
Mhm.
no question. My brother and I know. When my mom was in the hospital in December and they were throwing all these things at me, I was calling my brother and I'm like, this and that and the other. And he's like, Mom wouldn't want that. And I said, I know. And he said, did you tell him that? And I said, oh, yeah, I already told him. I'm just calling to tell you I told him. I didn't need to call my brother and have the conversation first because my parents made the decision.
Huh.
We don't get to make a different decision. It's legally documented, right?
Mhm.
Now, I will say one other thing about that. Make sure when you do that, that you look at your state specific laws. If you are working with an
Mm.
attorney setting up your trust, they will know this. But
Correct.
if you're doing a service where you do it on your own, you've got to check. In the state of Texas, there are two different kinds of do not resuscitates. There's an in-hospital
Huh.
one, which is the standard one included in your trust. And
Okay.
I found out in my mom's second hospitalization that in the state of Texas, there is a state specific one for out of the hospital, meaning if my mom had a stroke, had a heart
Mm.
attack, fell and was unconscious, not breathing, and I called 911, if I don't have a piece of paper to hand them,
Mm.
state specific saying do not resuscitate, they are legally required to resuscitate. So not only do you have to have it, you need to have it readily accessible in an emergency. So I now have a copy in my car, in my purse, in my house with all the documentation. I give any medical, home health, whatever person that comes. There's a copy in my boyfriend's car. My son has a copy he carries with him. So, because that's important, that's going to be a
Yeah.
split second situation. So it's important to one, have that put in place so that, listen, people's opinions may change different later in life too. And you may be like, I don't want my parents to go, but your parents already made that choice. And so when you're letting them go, you're letting them go based on something they choose, not trying to decide, am I letting them go too soon? Am I making them stay too long? Right.
They're different. They're real quick. And I'm not an
Yeah,
attorney. Let me state that real clear. I'm not an
yeah,
attorney. But my understanding is a will can be contested.
correct.
The trust cannot. So again, I go back to if you have multiple siblings who are not in agreement, you can contest a will and then the parents suffer.
Hmm.
In a trust, it's all there laid out. So it's got to be, and they cannot do anything about it. It's what the parents want has to be done now.
Yeah. And let's be honest, the cost of a trust on average nationwide for, I would say, probably 95% of middle American families from an
Mm,
income and finance perspective is going to run you about $4,000 to $6,000 on average.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a chunk of money. But if you
Mm,
don't do that, even if everything goes well as far as the caregiving decisions and when to let them go and all of that, everything they own is going to go into probate, and I promise you it's going to cost you more than $4,000 to $6,000 to hire an attorney then just to navigate probate, let alone what else the government and the court system is going to pull
correct.
from their estate. So it is an investment, but it's an investment now that can save you hand over fist and save the legacy that you want to leave for your
Yeah.
loved ones when you're no longer here. So definitely important to do that. The
Mm,
next thing I want to talk about is briefly some of the things you can put in place, because people might be thinking, okay, you're telling me to save for this. How do I know how much to save and what? I just put it in a bank account. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Now, I'm going to give a couple statistics, and then Steve's going to share a little bit about some of the things you can put in place to cover those concerns. Because no, you're not going to just stick it in a bank account. I mean, you could, but it's not ideal, right? So the average full care hands-on nursing home in the United States is going to run you a minimum of 8 to 10,000 per month for a loved one. So let's just say on the high side it's 10,000, that's $120,000 a year for their care. Now, if they're at home and you hire support care, if you have 24-hour caregivers coming into your home, you're paying about $5,000 a week minimum for that, which then the cost is $20,000 a month or $240,000 a year. So that is what we're talking about. That is the kind of money. You may have $1 million saved for retirement, but one medical situation at $240,000 a year, or even $120,000 a year, you've got $1 million. You've got about 8 years before you're out of money. But what about your spouse? If you have a spouse, what about your spouse to even afford to live while your care is going on, let alone
mhm.
once you're gone? So, Steve, will you share a little bit about the two types of products we have that people can put in place to give them that peace of mind and those resources without feeling like they have to get a second full-time job for the rest of their life to afford this?
Sure. So before I go into those two,
Yeah.
let me say that there are several people, I'm in New York, and there are several people in some of my networking groups who specifically have a business around helping seniors navigate this
Mm.
whole process. And one of the things they continue to say is the population is growing older. Let me
Mm.
refer when we're growing, but the population is growing older
Yes.
faster than they are building residences for them, which means if it's 120 in some type of facility, if you can get your parent or parents into the facility,
Yeah.
you may have to keep them home, which means it's not 120, it's 240 based on the numbers you just gave out, which are accurate from what I know. So you got to figure the high side, not
Yep.
the low side, even though the low side is bad enough. You got to figure the high side.
Yep.
So now the two different tools or products that from the financial standpoint that we can offer, one is a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider. And I personally have that for myself. So I have a policy, and included in there says, if I am diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia, a percentage of that face value is used for my care every single month until it's exhausted. And based on the numbers that are out there, it will take about 5 years for that money to be exhausted. Which, and I hate to say it this way, but statistically, the average is 4 to 5 years, and then you're pretty much end of life.
Yep.
So the policy will cover in that case. Another option, and again, the goal with that is because part of that policy is you have to be healthy to qualify for it.
Yes.
So if you are aware enough of it and educated enough, which is part of what we're doing here, when somebody is younger, they're healthier. And it's because of age, it's less expensive, much less expensive. So if you have the opportunity and somebody's in their 50s or even early 60s, get that type of policy. And then after a certain number of years, based on the company and stuff, and they're all different, but based on the company and the policy you choose, it's already paid up by a certain amount of time. And the premiums never go up. So you're done. It's not like the old type. This is the new type. So you pay it and it's done. The other type is if there is a larger amount of money, to invest that money in an annuity. And certain annuities, not all, certain annuities have a feature in there that if you are diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia, they will increase the amount of monthly payment that you're getting for a certain amount of time to help defray the cost of the long-term care. So there's two different tools, but again, the earlier the better. So at least from all the burden that we face, the financial side should not be one of those burdens. So now you can focus on the person with one less concern and devote more of your time and attention as opposed to the financial side.
Yes. Thank you for breaking those down. And I will say, if you're looking for life insurance, if you're a young married person who just bought a home and has a couple little kids and you're like, hey, I realize the importance of having a policy outside of my employer, because what if I lost my job? I no longer have life insurance coverage. And so you're looking for something. If you need help, feel free to reach out to Steve and I. If you have somebody you're talking to, please specifically ask, does this policy or do the policies you're showing me include long-term care and or living benefits? Because if you want to talk about less expensive, my son has, it's funny because I didn't realize this. I thought one of the life insurances I put in place for my son was $500,000 and the other one was $250,000. And I just realized it's $750,000 and $250,000. So my 24, almost 25-year-old son has $1 million in life insurance coverage, permanent life insurance, including living benefits, which will cover the long-term care piece. There's a component of living benefits that covers that, but it will also cover him if he's diagnosed with a critical or chronic illness. So if he gets diagnosed with cancer and it's considered terminal, then there's a higher percent of access you have to those death benefits. But yeah, $1 million. And these are permanent policies. And I'll just tell you all, because it's my son, so I can throw his numbers out there. Actually, I'm the owner of the policies, so I can really throw them out there. I don't even need his permission. I got the policies on him. Eventually, he will take over them and continue funding them. But those two policies combined for over $1 million is less than $100 a month in premium for both policies. $1 million life insurance, including living benefits. So when you're talking affordability, if you're super healthy, you can get a great policy for a really affordable, less than you probably spend on, energy drinks at the gas station, or less than you spend, definitely less than you spend eating out for a family of four one time in a month. If you're healthy and you're young. So now's the time to get it, not later. One of the other things you touched on earlier, and I forgot to circle back on, was you talked about that your parents never wanted to talk about it. They just said they were good. They didn't want to talk about the details. And that is very common for those of us in the sandwich generation who are stepping into this now. Our parents likely never talked to us about it. Now, my parents pushed us to try and know what they had. And I wish I would have known what I knew back then, because maybe I could have got him some additional coverage, but they did okay on their own. They actually did, thank goodness. But baby boomers did not talk about the money. especially the mid to oldest baby boomers, where it was very much a single income family all along. The spouse might not have even been involved in the financial conversations. That was just the world we lived in back then. I think the younger boomers and definitely Gen X are the ones who have asked more of those questions, looked at how we can be prepared. But the truth is, if you don't have this in place, one of two things happens. You go through an agonizing process of trying to get approved on Medicaid. And if you do get approved on Medicaid, then you go through the agonizing process of finding a facility that has a Medicaid bed, because each retirement facility is only required to have so many Medicaid beds. And if they don't have any, you're out of luck. And then thirdly, if those things don't work, or your parents have too many assets to qualify for Medicaid, but they don't have the free cash to pay for their care, guess what happens? It falls on you. And I can promise you there's no way that I would let my parents go without. There's no way I would let my parents end up on the street. And so we begin draining our own retirement savings to step up and fill the gaps in theirs. So I know, Steve, there's something else you want to share about that.
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts. And I do not want to get political, but I'm making a statement here. Based on the economy and the government and everything else, we don't know the state of Medicare and Medicaid going forward. How much are they going to give? How much are they going to cover? And I will tell you that 2 years ago, I had a conversation with someone who lives in Minnesota. And I believe it was his mother was in a Medicaid facility. And again, certain number of beds. And they gave all the Medicaid residents 6 months to vacate, because they said, we are no longer accepting Medicaid because they don't pay enough, and they were going private pay.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you plan and spend down and everything else to be eligible for Medicaid, you may not find a bed.
Yeah.
Because they're going more and more private pay. And I hate to say it, but that's where the money is, and that's what they're going for.
100%. It's still a business. It's still a business. The other side of that, and let me see if I can. Oh, the other side of that is, if approved on Medicaid, family caregivers, there are programs that will pay family caregivers to provide the care in their homes for their loved one. But my parents have too many assets. They will never qualify for Medicaid. And so therefore, I don't get paid for the care I provide for my parents, because Medicare does not do that. And I do not live in a state that has programs that do now. There are some states that do have some state specific programs that even without Medicaid, I think you can at least get some help and support. I don't know if it's necessarily income. But it's one of the things that I know in the caregiving world that I'm so plugged into now. People are trying to push for changes in local and national legislation about paying family caregivers and how a program like that could be set up. But you make a good point. Those programs, who knows if they're going to continue to be funded? Who knows at what level? Who knows if these companies are going to take it? And same goes for Social Security. So if your parents only have Social Security to pay for their needs, what's that going to look like? I don't know how many times it's been, but I know they've delayed the age at which you can get it, and they staggered out the amount. So you never know when there could be changes, even in just the income that they are getting. And so that can be scary. And again, it can fall to the family members to fill in those gaps. And even more so, it can force you into a caregiving situation because there is no other choice. And that is scary. I think that happens way more often than I even know about. And I know about a lot of it.
Yeah.
And it's sad because as I said earlier in the episode, and I've said in multiple episodes and all over my social media when I talk about this, it's okay not to choose to be a caregiver, even for your parents, even for your spouse, even for your own
Mm-hmm.
children, if you're not built to do that. And you can make that choice if you have the means to. But when
Mm-hmm.
you are not wired and you have no desire to, or even more so, and I know some people in this situation, they had a very broken relationship with their loved ones. And yet, when it came down to it, they had to step into a caregiving role for somebody that, for a million reasons, they didn't have a healthy relationship with. And so that's what taking these steps, that's what doing this work can prevent. It can prevent those situations. It can give the people you love most choices, whether you love most your parents, or maybe there is a severed relationship there and you love yourself and your current family most. You can make sure that you can continue to support that. But if you don't have the right things in place, those choices get made for you
Yep.
oftentimes.
Yep.
And I think that is devastating on every level. That's devastating.
Always better to have an option
Yeah.
than to not and have somebody dictate your future.
Yeah.
It always is.
Absolutely.
Always is.
And the financial stress that can come along with caregiving is going to impact so many other things. As a caregiver, I promise you, caregiver burnout, 100% real, 100% real.
Uh-huh.
So now imagine that without the financial means, right?
It's a no-win.
Yeah.
It's a no-win.
And some people don't have a choice to become that full-time hands-on caregiver because they have to have the money from their job, their full-time job, to be able to make ends meet and provide for the person they're caring for. But it doesn't stretch far enough to provide for that support care. I know coming into this episode, Steve and I did a recap before, and there were a few things I was going to touch on and dive into this episode that I think I'm not going to do the same way, because I think the direction the conversation went was exactly what it needed to be, which is how I like my episodes to go. Oftentimes there's enough structure to kick off the conversation, and then it's whatever it is after that, because I believe whatever direction the conversation goes is where it was meant to go. And I think that this conversation about the finances is especially important. This episode is dropping the second week of April, and April is financial education, financial awareness month, financial education month, all of that. And so I think that, maybe that's an aspect of why the conversation went the way it is, because this is the month that we focus on getting as much education and awareness out there as we do it all the time, but we're especially posting more about it this month. And so this conversation being had and really heavily touching on the financial side of caregiving is very timely, I think, from that perspective. I talked a little bit about burnout, and I talked about how the financial burden on top of everything else can just exacerbate that. But y'all, think about this. 40 to 70% of caregivers show some signs of depression.
Oof.
And on top of that, that depression or the chronic stress that comes along with caregiving is impacting caregivers' own health multiple times over. I follow a lot of caregivers who speak about their journeys and their stories, like I do on my social media, a lot of groups, a lot of companies that offer all different kinds of support to caregivers. And one of the things I've seen a lot lately is, what if the caregiver passes before the person they're caring for?
Ooh.
And yeah, there are times none of us know our graduation date from life, right? There's so much we can't control. But I personally have talked previously about my own health journey that I had to go on this last year and a half, because I realized 2 years into full-time caregiving with my parents living with me, I had completely lost sight of myself. I had gained weight. I wasn't sleeping well. I had all the aches and pains. Not that I was going to the hospital or having major things going on, but my mental health, I didn't care. I didn't care. I was going through the motions. And that, when I realized that, I woke up one day and realized that, and that scared me because I realized I can't show up for them. I'm going through the motions to show up for them, but I will not be able to show up for them if I don't start showing up for me.
Correct.
And that's the other part of having these conversations early, is being able to plan for that. Finding out, if you do have multiple siblings, is there one that wants to take on the responsibility?
Yeah.
And then, by goodness, if you have a sibling that takes on the responsibility, step up and fill in the gaps. Step up and fill in the gaps. Be a place of respite for them, even if you're at a distance. I talk to my brother probably once or twice a week. He's still in Utah, 1,200 miles away, but he is my safe space. I can call and vent to him. I can call and cry to him. I can call and just have him make me laugh, whatever it is. That is my saving grace. One, because he knows our parents better. I have a ton of people who check on me, who care about me, who show up for me in all different ways. But for my brother, who knows my parents best and knows to a huge degree what it can be like navigating them, to just be that place I can call. And I don't have to have guilt. I don't have to feel bad. I'm not asking for advice. He just sits and he listens to me.
You need that. You need somebody to talk to. You do.
And then if I want the input, I'm like, hey, I'm going to dump on you with what I'm frustrated about. And then I'm going to tell you what's happening. And then I need your input on a couple things. I'll give him the framework of the conversation, but he shows up exactly how I need him to, perfectly. But you've got to communicate that. And if you're stepping into caregiving, there will be swings and changes no matter how much you plan. Continue to communicate. Communicate with the people that are supporting you, and be an advocate in every way for the person that you're caring for. Steve talked about how he attempted to talk to his parents 2 different times. And we run into this all the time. And what we do, we sit down with clients who say, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. You're good until you're not. You're good until you're not, because at some point, something's going to come along that knocks you off your feet that you didn't plan and prepare for. And with all the planning in the world, it may still not be perfect.
Right.
But it won't be devastating.
Right. But because we also don't know when. I'm good today.
Yep.
Am I good tomorrow? The next day, next week? We don't know.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. We don't know. That's why you have to prepare now.
Yes. And if you're a caregiver, it's even more important that you look at your own financial plan and make sure that you're set up the way you need to be, because you're seeing right up front the costs. Because caregiving today, or caregiving, does not just affect today, it affects your entire financial future, you as the caregiver.
Yeah.
And as a full-time caregiver, you lose about $300,000 worth of lifetime wages and benefits by stepping out of the workforce to be a hands-on caregiver. Now, I stepped out of the workforce before I became a hands-on caregiver. I have my own business and I'm able to do it from home. So I'm able to build my schedule around my life instead of the other way around. That being said, with my mom's more significant declines, and Steve knows this because I've leaned on him, and my great team of business partners like Steve have stepped in to fill in the gaps for me, but I've had to shift my hours a little bit differently than they used to be. And I'm able to still build my business and make a good income. But having people, even in business, if you're a business owner that can fill in the gaps when you're a caretaker, is a game changer as well. And that loss of $300,000 in lifetime income could be the seed of your retirement if you were working on it all along the way. So, Steve, I'm going to ask you a couple of closing questions.
Sure.
What do you wish you knew before you became a caregiver for your parents?
What do I wish I knew? I wish I knew how to better communicate to my parents so that they could take action instead of saying, no, I'm okay, and I let it go. I wish I knew how to change that conversation. So it would be a totally different picture when they needed it.
That's a good answer. That's a really good answer. So if you're listening to this thinking, okay, how do I do that? That's what Steve and I do. We help families navigate these conversations. And, if your parents are facing looking at what they have, or you or your spouse are, we're there to help
Mhm.
navigate the conversation, to help give you the informations on the where's, the whys, the how things work, to make the decisions something you can feel good about because you
Mhm.
understand what you're stepping
Yep.
into. All right, next question. What would you tell somebody just starting out on this journey of caregiving?
You're not alone.
Mm,
Reach out to people who are in it, have experienced it. It may not make it any easier, but knowing that you're not alone, that alone makes it easier. Because the
amen to that.
mental game is extremely challenging when you're on an island by yourself. Reach
Yes.
out, talk to people, get the support.
Amen to that 100 times over. Use your voice to advocate for yourself as a
Mhm.
caregiver. It's so important. And there's so many resources. And if you have followed me for any period of time, you will notice in the last 4 to 6 months, I talk a lot more about caregiving, and it's intertwined with my business and everything I share now.
Mm.
And the reason why is I guess it's just been about 4 months because my mom's significant decline started the week before Thanksgiving. From then to her hospitalization the week before Christmas, I was leaning onto friends I'd made on social media just by following their accounts talking about caregiving. And through that process, they helped me so much navigate that first hospitalization and everything that the hospital and all their experts are throwing at you that make you feel like you can't stay true to the decision your parents made or what you want to do for them. And I reached out and had a couple extensive conversations. They're like, you can do whatever you want. You're the one in charge.
Mhm.
Use your voice and advocate for what you and your parents want. And it
Right.
was a game changer for me. And I started talking so much more about it because I realized then, not just was I learning along the way, these people were a lifeline for me in that time. And not everybody I know who might follow me follows them. So if I don't
Mm.
share brutally honestly what caregiving can be like, somebody might not get that support that I've been blessed to get from the people I follow. And so that's why you will see a lot of that information on mine. But the most important thing, I think you're right, is you are not alone. All right, so last one. How does your history of caregiving and your parents' journey at the end of their lives change your perspective on protecting families? I think you've already talked some to this, but give us kind of a short, concise, how did that impact the work you do at a whole other level?
It's a huge difference because when we speak, you and I, when we speak to a family, young, middle aged, older, we're coming at it from experience. We know what it takes. We're not taking stuff out of a book saying, oh, the book on page 17, paragraph 4 says this. This
Mhm.
is real life we've experienced. And I have found that when we are sitting across the table from someone, they can hear it in your voice. They can see it in your eyes that it's personal. It's
Mhm.
not a transaction to generate an income. It's personal. That's the difference that it's made for me when I speak with families.
I love that. And that's a good point. Not every financial situation, conversation you walk into will be that personal level. But I know the company Steve and I are affiliated with, but Steve and I personally, if you reach out to us, you're about to come into the fold. We're not here to just put a piece of paper in front of you to sign and disappear. We're here to support you every step of the way in creating the financial goals and dreams you have to give your family the life that you want them to have. We are about relationships, not transactions. And I think that that's a really important point you made. So thank you for sharing that. All right, Steve, how do people find you? Because you share different information than me. You and I are a few years apart, and
Just a few.
Just a few, and you're a guy and I'm a girl. So everybody has who they're comfortable with talking to. And I want people, if you're listening to this, you can reach out to Steve and he will take just as good a care of you as I will. And vice versa. So where can they find and follow you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. If you want, email me. It's steve@stevekentfs.com. And I'll get right back to you. If you need to get me right away, am I allowed to give my phone number?
That's up to you, my friend. Go for it.
All right. The phone number is 516-727-2294. And just let me know that you heard about me through Nat with Chat. So I'll know, that you're not just a stranger coming in.
Yeah.
But I will certainly absolutely take the time, speak with you. No worries, no problems. Totally confidential, totally complimentary. This is not a sales pitch. This is how to help you from my experiences.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad you touched on that too. The work we do with our clients directly and having these conversations is complimentary. There's not a fee out of pocket. So if you ever thought I can't get help because I can't afford it, yes, you can, because free. And we do that because we want to be able to help everybody start on that path, whatever it looks like for you. There's no judgment. There's conversation, understanding what's important to you, and then strategizing together. And best case scenario, if you want Steve and I both, you can work with both of us at the same time. We work very closely together, helping people to put in place what they want to and answer all their questions, because it's fun when we get to work together. But oftentimes we have different perspectives too that can work really well when we're working with a family or a couple. So as always, you can reach out to me with any questions through the link in the show notes. I will put Steve's email. I'm not going to put your phone number in the show notes, but I will put your email in there so they can reach you. But you can reach out to me in the show too and ask me how to get a hold of Steve. And because he gave his phone number here, if you tell me you heard him on this episode and you want to talk to him, I will send you his phone number directly, but I'm not just going to put it out on the interwebs in the show notes. So any last thing you want to share, Steve, before I close this episode out?
Just to restate, well, two things. One is thank you so much for having this episode. It's very much needed. So thank you. And thank you for having me as part of it. And just to remember to everybody out there, you're not alone. Reach out. We're here to help you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being here, Steve. I always love talking to you. I get to talk to you a lot, but I always love talking to you and actually sharing about what we do with you. So we are actually working on a retirement webinar series too, that we'll put the information. It'll be on our social medias, but it'll be embedded in the podcasts in the next few weeks too. So if you're just looking for some planning and understanding and further education, we're going to have some tools out that will help you do that soon.
Perfect.
So I want to close this episode out just by reminding people, caregiving for our parents is one of the greatest honors we will ever carry, but it should never come at the cost of our own future. We were never meant to do this alone, and we were definitely never meant to do it unprepared. If we truly love our families, we don't just show up when it's hard. We prepare now so it doesn't have to be as hard. If this episode hit home for you, don't just sit with it, act on it. You can message me. You can simply go to the link in the show notes and message me the word plan. You can email Steve the word plan, and we will reach out to you. We'll send you our Calendly links to set up a time to talk. But let's make sure your family is protected, prepared, and positioned before life forces you into decisions that you didn't see coming. As always, thank you for joining me on Chat with Nat, Conversations That Count. If this episode spoke to you, please share it with somebody who needs to hear it, because these are the conversations that don't just change finances, they change families. Until next time, protect your peace, protect your people, and protect your ability to show up when it matters most.